Welcome into the Inside Carolina podcast. This is the UNC player preview. We're breaking down all the players. Today we're going to talk about Justin McKoy, transfer Justin McKoy. I'm your host, Ross Martin, joined by Sherrell McMillan and Greg Barnes. Justin McKoy, let me bring up the stats here. Transfer from Virginia, listed at 6'8", 220. His third season in college. He's listed as a junior. And last year at Virginia, let's see, he played 19 games, 4 starts, 11.3 minutes, 3.5 points, 3.3 rebounds, and a half an assist. So really didn't play and hasn't played that much in college. Sherrell, you covered his recruitment to UNC as a transfer, and we hear that he's a popular guy early on for the Tar Heels. He can defend a lot. He can guard a lot of positions. He can shoot the ball. What's your take on Justin McKoy, his first season at UNC?
I would say first a little bit of background. Roy Williams offered him a scholarship 3 years ago as a high school senior. So he's not someone who they just found kind of on the scrap heap, so to speak. They thought he could play leaving out of high school, and they think he can play after 2 years at Virginia. The issue, I think, at Virginia was that he just had really good players in front of him. Sam Hauser was in front of him. Trey Murphy was in front of him. Mamadi Diakite was in front of him, and then Braxton Key was in front of him as well. 4 really good players at the ACC level. So I think he had that kind of going against him. And at UNC, the fresh start is that he was the first one to buy into what Hubert Davis wanted to do. Hubert Davis got the job on April 5th. By April 9th, Justin McKoy had entered the portal and committed to UNC. So I think that is kind of instructive on what exactly Hubert Davis is looking for. And he said time and time again that he wants that kind of prototype 3-4, 4-3 big, and McKoy can do that. And they like him a lot. And he didn't shoot a lot last year because he didn't play a lot, but they think he can be a plus shooter from 3 as well.
Greg, you saw him at the open practice. I thought he was one player that stood out, especially with that dunk. And you look at him, you can tell he's played and been in a college strength and conditioning program. He's bigger and stronger than, say, a Puff Johnson and some of the players in his position. What do you see? How do you see him performing in year one and his role at Carolina?
I think he was a key acquisition for Hubert Davis. Everything that we've heard, to follow up on what Rel said there, is that he's very technically sound. He understands what he's supposed to do. He's a very smart basketball player. He's a great defender. A lot of that is positioning. We always think about good defenders as being just great athletes. He's a good athlete, but he just knows where to be. He knows how to move his feet and all those kind of things. And it really speaks to what Tony Bennett does in Charlottesville. You have to be technically sound to play for him. And so McKoy's bringing that approach to Chapel Hill. And I think that's great for the team because that's going to allow some of the guys to be like, oh, okay, this is how we're supposed to do it. So that's very beneficial. I also kind of think it kind of frees him up a little bit. Tony Bennett's systems, I don't know if restrictive is the right word, but it is a situation where you're not able to splash and really kind of show how good of a player you are. Outside just kind of normal play. I think McKoy's going to be able to do that. I mean, if you look at some of his numbers, yes, he didn't play many minutes for Virginia last year. Defensive rebounding rate, 26.3. That's really good. Effective field goal percentage, 50.9. That's solid. Offensive rebounding percentage, that was the best on Virginia's roster at 11.2. That's really good. So he understands the importance of rebounding. He takes good shots. So I think that's a plus for North Carolina at the 3. I do think he's going to start over Leaky Black. And that, as I said, I think is a very important acquisition for Hubert.
There's your blockbuster line starting over Leaky Black. And talking to Justin McKoy, the maturity is there. I think he could be a leader for this team. It's a young team that it has a new staff, so there's definitely an opportunity to come in and be a leader. And the fact that I remember him saying, when we had him on a press conference, that there'd be times when they would practice defense, 80 to 90% of the time at Virginia. So that kind of understanding of defensive rebound is definitely valuable. Sherrell, in speaking with him, what kind of person is he? What can you kind of tell us about him as a guy that could kind of lead to qualities that could help him at UNC?
Very intense, I think, from the conversations I've had with him. I think Carolina kind of hopes some of that magical Tony Bennett defensive dust, comes into the Smith Center and just takes over. Because I mean, and he to me is a perfect example of why the transfer portal is so valuable. Because instead of recruiting, they recruited him out of high school, but basically Tony Bennett has done 2 of the years of the work for UNC.
That's right.
He's gotten him, to be a good defender. He understands those principles. He's really sound, and now he comes to Carolina kind of more fully formed than he was before, and he has 3 years of eligibility left. I mean, that is, to me, that is the dream scenario for the transfer portal. But back to him as a person. Yeah, I think he has a chip on his shoulder, a huge one, because he put up big numbers in high school, and I don't think he got recruited the way he thought he should have been. A lot of his stuff didn't come into the spring when schools were kind of desperate to find people just to fill out their roster. For those who don't know, he originally committed to Penn State out of Panther Creek High School outside of Raleigh. And he decommitted from there at some point, I think March of his senior year. And that's when Carolina started sniffing around, when Virginia sniffed around, all offered him, NC State offered him, and he ultimately picked Virginia. So I think there's still some not hostility, that's not the right word, but the chip on his shoulder from feeling like he was under recruited before. And now people are saying, well, why did Carolina take this guy from Virginia who couldn't play? He's the type of guy who listens to all that and uses it as fuel and motivation.
And that's what UNC needs. They need those dogs, those guys who have something to prove. I think that UNC's lacked that type of player in recent years. Greg, anything to add about him playing the 3 position? What kind of can bring that's different for that role at UNC?
Well, the ability to be a lockdown defender is key. But I think more than anything, North Carolina really struggled with turnovers last year. And a lot of that was a lack of concentration, lack of focus, and lack of maturity. And I think McKoy hits all those points. And he understands the importance of each possession. Got to do that when you're playing for Tony Bennett. But with his defensive ability paired with the kind of that smart thinking about the game, understanding what the game about, I think that's very important for this team, especially with some of the young guys that are going to be playing.
I think it's going to be super interesting to see the rotation there with him, Leaky, Puff, Kerwin playing the 2 and 3, and how much those guys also play the 4, the small ball 4 as well. So definitely interesting to track. You could see Leaky and Justin on the field, on the court at the same time. Justin McKoy arrives at UNC as a transfer, has 3 years of eligibility, and maybe slides a starter for the Tar Heels in the 2021-22 season.